Hello, and welcome to the Panam Sports Channel. I'm Panam Sports Communications Manager Kevin Nutley, and today I'm honored to be speaking with not only a great athlete, but also a great person and a social activist, Gwen Berry. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
No
Hello.
problem. And for those of you who don't know, Gwen competes in the hammer throw for the United States, and she holds the national record for the event, and she also became the Pan American Games champion at Lima 2019 last September. But while receiving your medal on the podium, you raised your fist in protest of racial inequality and injustice in the United States, and an action which caused the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee to give you probation for a year. So first, I want to ask, what was your reaction after you heard about this probation, and how long after your protest did you receive the news?
So my reaction when I heard about me being on probation, I felt like because rules are rules. They had to do what they had to do. However, I felt like I was not supported by the USOPC because here I am, an American athlete who did the same thing that Tommy Smith and John Carlos did, and they were praised for it, yet they reprimanded me for it and they put me on probation. I know that their decision was, brought down upon them by the IOC, so they probably feel like their hands were tied, but I still feel like they did not support me. So that was kind of frustrating, and I feel like hypocritical because they praised the Olympians in the 1968 games, but here they are putting me on probation.
Right.
So I was pretty angry about that one.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
And now,
And
oh, go ahead. Yeah.
I was about to say, I received the news that I was going to be on probation, like, I want to say like 2 weeks after I protested.
So, and now, in the wake of the civil unrest in the United States with protests across the country following the tragic killing of George Floyd, you are once again using your platform as an athlete to advocate for social change. What's the message you want to be sending during these difficult times?
I think my first message during these difficult times is for everyone to not be discouraged and for everyone to please, please, please be active in this movement because these things happen all the time. The killings of Black men and Black women in America happen all the time. And I feel like usually it's, a fad or a trend. So, when something happens, after a couple of weeks, it dies down. But I feel like my first message would be that we definitely need to maintain momentum. We have to keep, posting, retweeting, protesting, voting. We have to bring about action now because for some reason this one just hit everyone differently. I feel like for people that do feel like they are overwhelmed and tired from everything that's going on, to please seek some type of peace of mind, meditate, get counseling, get off of social media. Like if it is overwhelming, to please take care of yourself mentally and emotionally first. So those would be my two biggest things that I would tell anybody during this time.
Great messages. And going back to Lima 2019, what motivated you to raise your fist on the podium? And was the decision you made in the moment, or had you planned the protest before the competition?
So definitely for me, my protest was in the moment. Something came over me on the podium, and I was just like, you know what? I need to do something to show people that I too, I was raised in this type of system. I'm a product of the system, and I'm still here when people did not want me to be there. So I feel like I did it first and foremost to raise awareness and to show people who I stand for and where I stand, and how bold I am to say I will use my platform as a sacrifice to make sure people do not go unheard or unseen. And I feel like leading up to Pan Am's, a lot of things happen, like in my practices and, of course, in my life, for me to realize that, the issues in America and even in athletics are bigger than what people see, like what people may see. People see, the surface. But if you dig a little bit deeper, the roots of racial injustice and our racial, like, the racism in our system, it just goes deeper. It's deeply rooted, and I feel like those things played a part in my upbringing, and they played a part in my athletic career. So leading up to it, I was just kind of talking to my coaches a lot about those types of things, and it just resonated with me, and I was just pretty upset by some things. So even though it wasn't premeditated, I definitely had some things going on in my mind,
Mhm.
and I just had enough.
I bet. And fellow American and fencer Ray Simboden also took a knee on the podium at Lima 2019 and received the probation for doing so. Now, you said it was in the moment protest for you, but have you spoken to him after your protest about what you both did at the games or had any
I mean, we
communication?
race talk all the time. We actually had a podcast last night, and
Okay.
we talk over the phone. So we definitely keep in touch, and we try to just relay messages and ideas, and because we're both part of the USOPC, we have to stay in touch. And I back him, and I stand with him, and he stands with me.
That's great. And you recently, speaking of the USOPC, you recently demanded and received an apology from them regarding its stance towards athlete protest. Can you tell us a little bit about these discussions and the ways the U.S. Olympic team is reviewing its policies on this issue? And have you spoken with the USOPC Athlete Commission about this?
I can't really say because everything is in the works. I can only say that the USOPC has made a statement. I think everybody saw that they are willing to create an athletes commission to fight Rule 50 and the IOC. I'm not a part of the athletes commission, but I do have input because I'm still training. I do have a job to do, and I do have to focus. So even though I'm not actively a part of the athletes commission, I have talked to peers, and I have talked to people that are in that commission, and they are gearing up to fight the IOC to repeal Rule 50.
Mhm. And recently, I think it was last week, we had Blackout Tuesday was a common trend on throughout social media in the United States and the world. And during that day, World Athletics used a photo of your podium protest to show support for the Black Lives Matter movement, and in essence, support for your stadium protest. What kind of message did that send to you?
I feel like it sent a message that even though some organizations do not back me and do not support me, I feel like there are other organizations who do respect me and do see what peaceful protesting can do. Peaceful protesting is a way um, to to create conversation, to create awareness, and to create a movement. And I feel like they respect me for that, and I respect them for using my image to support the Black Lives Movement.
Hmm. That's great. And your protest at Lima, and definitely, as you mentioned, invoked memories of Tommy Smith and John Carlos, who raised their fist at the Mexico 1968 Olympics. And after doing so, they also received severe backlash and were banned by the IOC and even received death threats 50 years later. And you do the same thing at the games,
Mhm.
at the Pan Am Games, and you're receiving the same kind of backlash, the same kind of threats, and the same kind of sponsorship pool that they face. What steps are needed to reach a place where athletes can protest without these life-changing consequences?
I think the only way, I think the first step is for athletes to understand their power and their voice. I feel like athletes don't understand how imperative we are in this whole process. Like, it's because of us that the sport exists, right? So I feel like athletes need to understand how our voice and our power does matter. And I feel like that's one of the things that I realized when I did protest was, I'm public enemy number one, and I ain't even say anything. I just put my fist up. So imagine if all the athletes around the world stand up and say, enough is enough. We want to be able to speak out on these issues that are so dear to us in our culture because we lived it. We were raised in it. We are a product of it. And somehow we got out of the situation. However, the situation is still dear to us. I think that's the first step is for athletes to realize how much we play a part in this. I think number two is for our national governing bodies to get behind us. We need support. Our national governing bodies work for us. And that's another thing that needs to be, understood. They work for us. They work for us athletes. So they need to get behind us. They need to support us. They need to fund us. They need to do whatever they can. They need to go to war for us, whatever they can do to help us bring out this message and let people know that we are genuinely sincere in our acts to create equality.
Hmm. Definitely. And going back to Tommy Smith and John Carlos, Peter Norman from Australia was the third athlete on the podium during that protest. And while he didn't directly participate, he did wear a human rights badge supporting the cause. And
Right.
but by doing so, he also received a lot of backlash and Olympic fallout from his actions.
Mhm.
And I want to know before, or you said it wasn't premeditated for your protest, but did you have any conversations with the other two athletes on your podium, Brooke Anderson and Rosa Rodriguez, and to talk about maybe after it happened, what was your thinking, or did you have those
Um,
conversations?
no, I actually didn't have the conversations. I don't even think that they knew the severity of what I did, because I talked to Brooke and I said, "Yeah, Brooke, I might have to give you my medal because they might take my medal from me." And she was just like, "I'll just mail it back to you." She's like, "Everyone knows who won." Like,
Right.
so I don't think she understood the severity of my actions, which is pretty cool because, she sees it as, you did it, you did this, that's great, peaceful protest, whatever. She didn't see anything negative about it.
Mhm.
But eventually, when I spoke to her about it, she was just like, "Oh, that's crazy that they feel some type of way about your protest." And I was like, "Yeah, it is pretty crazy."
Mhm.
But no, I didn't talk to them about it
Do you
because
think?
literally it was a spur of the moment thing. Like, literally, it was pretty crazy.
Mhm. Do you think it's important to have these types of discussions moving forward if more athletes start protesting?
Absolutely. I feel like these discussions will happen regardless because if the IOC doesn't change its rules and the national governing bodies don't get behind their athletes, a lot of athletes are going to protest. And it's going to be a lot of questions asked, or, why did they protest? Why this? Why that? But I feel like athletes, I feel like the whole world has made a statement. And I feel like now everyone knows and understands why people peacefully protest. Like, and if they don't, I don't know what they've been doing these last 2 weeks.
Mhm.
So, I feel like that's a conversation that's going to be had everywhere, even in college, collegiate sports, every sport around the world.
Mhm. It's vital.
Yeah,
And so on one side, talking about these athlete protests at the games, on one side you have those who say the games should not be political and that protesting on the podium is not fair to the other athletes who are sharing that moment with you. But on the other hand, standing on the podium, as you mentioned in your own open letter that I read, is arguably the most important moment for an athlete, where all eyes are on them, making it the most impactful moment to make a protest. Do you
absolutely.
think there can be a balance found between these two opposing ideologies? Or can some other space be created for protesting that would have as much of an impact?
I don't think nothing will have as much as an impact as standing on the podium, winning gold during Olympic Games. Let's just be honest. There's nothing like it. There's nothing that can replicate it. There is nothing that can duplicate it. You only have one time, one opportunity. Or, if you go to the Pan Am Games, okay, cool. So maybe two in your lifetime if you make the Pan Am team. Because that process in itself is it's hard to make the Pan Am team. So I feel like because athletes only have that one moment, there's nothing that can supersede that. So okay, so then what do we do? So I feel like the IOC and athletes, we have to come to an agreement. So I feel like there are creative ways that we can come up with to where athletes may not have to make a physical gesture, but they can wear a badge or they can wear a ribbon or they can wear something on their jersey or their shirt or their podium uniform. Something creative can come of it, but I still think athletes only are given one chance and one opportunity, and that's just how it is.
Mhm. Yeah, it's hard to compete with that, right?
Yeah, it is. You can't compete with that. It's there's nothing like it. Now, if the Olympic Games were like every 2 years, maybe it would be different. But 4 years, so I sacrificed maybe 8 or 10 years to get here, and you telling me I can't do nothing? Come on.
Yep.
You ain't giving me a choice.
It's your only option. Yeah.
Right. It's my only option.
And part of the power of these podium protests is the fact that they aren't allowed. So you're
Right.
doing something that's against the rules to make a stand or statement despite the consequences that may follow. Do you
Absolutely.
think, just to play devil's advocate a bit, do you think that allowing podium protests could potentially devalue them? And secondly, if they are allowed more frequently, how do you regulate a peaceful protest from hate speech or any offensive gestures or negative ideologies?
Yeah, that's the problem, and that's what we talked about when we were on the call with the USOPC. Those were points that were brought up. So how do you regulate it? How do you determine what's peaceful and what's hateful, or how do you determine what's necessary and what's unnecessary? So those are things that we still gotta get together on and discuss. But I do feel like if peaceful protesting were allowed, then more people wouldn't do it, because people only break rules because they're created, and people hate rules, right? So if you allow us to protest, maybe we wouldn't do it, because we know we have that freedom too if we choose to. You see what I'm saying? So I just feel like it's really it's hard. It's really hard to gauge how it would look in the future if you are allowed to peacefully protest. However, I think the biggest issue with protesting or not is the fact that the IOC, they reprimand athletes for protesting. They take everything from the medals, career, everything, but yet they glorify it. I think that's the biggest issue is it's so hypocritical. It's not even funny, because the IOC gets to capitalize off people's moments, something that they stand for, something that they're proud of, and yet they get to ruin their careers at the same time. I think that's the biggest problem with the rule. If you're going to say you cannot protest and we'll take things from you, cool. But don't say you can't protest and then put us in a museum for protesting and for making this movement, and for being iconic for doing that. Don't do both. Mm-hmm. Give us one or the other.
Yeah, you can't have it both ways, right?
You can't.
No.
That's the biggest thing.
Right. And switching gears a little bit, although the world is facing an unprecedented and really unfortunate situation with this global pandemic, it is actually given time for your probation to end before competition returns. Is that correct?
Yep. I'll be on probation in August.
All right. And so now my question is, have you already qualified for Tokyo 2020 or 2021? And
yes.
Okay, so what are your goals for the games, both athletically and personally?
Definitely to win, first to make the team, of course, because the United States team is the hardest team to make. Only top 3 go, and we have 6 girls that can throw over 75 meters. So we are stacked in the hammer throw. So my first goal is to make the team, and my second goal is definitely to win, to dominate the competition. Personally, I haven't thought about that. I guess that is personal too, just to win and to be, considered an Olympic champion.
And do you hope to maybe see more peaceful protests, like you said, maybe badges on jerseys or on uniforms?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I feel like in the meantime, when we get all the rules and the regulations and all these creative ideas going, I do think that it would be cool to see something to show support of a civil rights movement. Mm-hmm. Well, not even civil rights. I mean, I guess it's different these days, but we're still fighting for the same thing. So.
Yeah. And do you think these decisions can be made in time for the games next year?
Absolutely. I mean, the IOC got enough money. They got enough staff. They got enough voices. They can push this agenda. They can. Mm-hmm. They have time.
For sure. And lastly, what's next? Where do we go from here, both in global sport and in America as a whole, where the issue has really been driven home recently?
I feel like the only thing I can say as far as what's next is, like I said before, just keeping momentum. Things will change over time. Things can change over time. I think it's going to be a slow change, but I believe that it can be a promising change. We have to, call out all of the racism that's in America, and we have to be accountable. Well, white people have to be accountable for these things that they've done and begin to deroot it. Because the history goes too far to not first and foremost be accountable, and secondly, self-educate yourself and just be active. I feel that sports, I feel like there does need to be rules, and owners and athletes, they need to get together to see how, if you do peacefully protest, how you'll be able to not be punished for it. I think that's important moving forward. But I mean, all in all, I just feel like the momentum is important. That's the most important thing.
Absolutely.
We have to keep speaking out on these problems.
And we hope we're helping out as Panam Sports, as giving you this platform to help spread your message, talk about these issues in an open and informative way.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Any last message you want to give to our audience watching, or who will be watching?
Just follow me. Support. Post, get educated, get active, and maintain momentum. That is number one.
That's key. And what's your Instagram or social media handles for people to follow you out there?
So all my social media handles are the same. Is Ms. MZ Berry, Berry throws, THROWS_.
Perfect. So thank you once again for joining us. This has been a great conversation. I'm so lucky to be able to speak with you about this important issue or important issues.
Yeah.
We hope to talk again soon. And yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
And once again, this has been Gwen Berry, the Lima 2019 champion in the hammer throw, hoping to qualify for Tokyo 2020 and make the U.S. Olympic team. And we hope to see you there as well. And good luck to you in all of your future endeavors on and off the field of play.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.